For two, kickers are extra, I give them the boot. Ooh, going for two, sit back, relax while I grab me a brew. Ooh, now I'm reclining while putting my time and I'm ready to go. My spine is aligning and much my lineups, my bank account grow. I am so rich, but knowledge is all that I'm leaving it with. Ooh, listen to this, multiple options, how far can I get? Ooh, DFS Dynasty redraft tonight, I'm not finishing last. I'm finishing past any and all, I am looking to last. What else? This spot is popping and I am so locked in and only opening the door when it is opportunity knocking. And all of these spots keep on talking and talking. So what are we talking? What kind of alignment and running it deep? Even players forgotten or came from the bottom or hitting that top end. And this spot is popping, yeah, this spot is popping. And woo! This is the armchair, yeah. Put up your arms, yeah. Sound the alarm, yeah, yeah, yeah. Woo! This is the armchair, yeah. Put up your arms, yeah. Sound the alarm, yeah, yeah, yeah. Woo.
What is going on, guys? Welcome to episode 206 of the Armchair Fantasy Show, not the Devi Royale, which just got tweeted out because I didn't change the tweet before we went live here. I haven't been in the studio for 3 weeks, so I'm a little bit out of practice here, but it is the Armchair Fantasy Show. And of course, we are live every Wednesday night on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch. Syndicated on all major podcast networks and streaming the Going For Two app for iOS and Android. If you're on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button for us. We really appreciate it. It helps us out. As always, I'm here with my co-host, Mr. Ryan Searfoss, who actually filled in for me 2 weeks ago when I had my vaccine and got sick. And then we had to cancel last week's show for a bunch of different reasons. But we are back this week. Ryan, how you doing, man?
Good, man. Glad to be back in the passenger seat.
Yeah, how was the hosting? How did you do? I mean, I listened to the show, but how do you think you did?
I think it went well. I think it was a little rough at first with the intros of people, and I didn't have all the cool drops of music that you do, and it felt weird not having that music for this show.
Yeah,
like I don't have it on my other show, but I had like a intro read and all that. Here, I'm like, this just sounds awkward. I'm trying to like remember like everything you say in the beginning. I'm like, no,
just,
not happening.
Yeah, just do your own thing. That's how you got to do it. All right, good stuff. All right, joining us tonight, this I believe is his fourth year in a row coming on to talk about his prospect success indicator, or PSI for short. Mr. Miguel Chapeton, the creator of the PSI, and this is the first year that he's come on that the PSI has been available to our Going For Two users on our website there. So Miguel, what's up, man?
What's going on, guys? Good to see you guys again. It's always a blast to come on and talk shop with you guys. Yeah, and just happy to be here. Thanks for having me back on. Definitely.
It's hard to believe it's been 4 years since the last time, since you first came onto the show. It's crazy to think that we've known each other that long.
I know. That's wild. I can't believe I've been on Twitter for that long doing this. Fighting the good fight.
Definitely. All right, so real quick, for those that don't know what the PSI is, give us a real quick rundown of what that is.
Yeah, so a little bit about me. I've been an analyst of some sort for a number of years, in my professional life, and got my start in forecasting. And so, it was a really natural transition for me to then take that and try to forecast out prospects. So for me, the best way to predict future success in anything is by using past success. And so out of that, PSI was born. So that's just the model that I built with the hope of identifying incoming wide receivers with the highest propensity to hit at the next level by building out their profiles and comparing them to all past successful wide receivers that we've seen in fantasy football. So when you see a percentage next to that, like a PSI score of, say, 90%, that's not a hit rate. It's just that's how close that player came to meeting that successful profile that we are comparing everyone to of all of the past successful wide receivers. So, that's basically it. Pre-draft, the as we've already dropped on going for two. That model captures about 75% of all wide receiver hits in the first three tiers, and then post-draft that increases up to 85% within the first top three tiers.
Nice, good stuff. And I didn't give you your Twitter handle. Of course, it's at ProFootballPSI. Make sure you go follow him. He's a great follow on Twitter. Let's get to the news and notes.
News and notes from around the league.
All right, news and notes, as always, is brought to you by Dynasty Trade Calculator. Everyone hates bad trades, right? No one wants to be that guy. Never make a bad trade offer again with the Dynasty Trade Calculator. Visit goingfor2.com/DTC to sign up for $15 a year. That's right. All you do is go to goingfor2.com/DTC. Get the best trade calculator for only $15 a year. Stop guessing. Start calculating. All right, so not a whole lot of news to talk about, really. It's sort of almost no news is what we're going to talk about. And no news so far on Julio Jones and where he might end up. Ryan, have you heard anything? I know for a little bit there it looked like it was me, or, my team or your team, and then it was Tennessee, and now we have no idea where he's going to go. Any thoughts on Julio Jones? You're on mute, Ryan.
Tried to sneeze, and I forgot to mute myself. I feel like it's gonna be Tennessee or the Patriots. Like, in all reality, they're the teams that keep popping up now. They make the most sense. Both need number one receiver. I mean, A.J. Brown's going to be getting triple teamed because who cares about Josh Reynolds right now?
Yeah.
And I can't remember who their tight end is since Johnny left. So they need him desperately. And the Patriots have things they can trade. They have first-round picks. They have a plethora of running backs. I saw somewhere like Sony Michel was in talks, which would make sense because the Falcons also desperate for a running back. So those two make sense to me. I don't buy Seattle. I think Baltimore's out, but that'd be my guess is that one of those two teams.
Yeah, that's kind of what I've heard too. Tennessee or the Patriots. Shane's on Twitter. He says the Packers, but I don't think that. I don't see that happen. And that would be a nice thing to happen for the Packers fans, but I don't think that's going to happen. Miguel, what are your thoughts on the Julio Jones situation right now?
I still think it's going to be Tennessee. That's been the team I've had pegged since day one. That just makes the most sense from an opportunity standpoint, from a win-now standpoint, and then to pair him with A.J. Brown would just be amazing for Ryan Tannehill. Imagine going from Corey Davis to Julio Jones, even at 32, or however old Julio is. That's just a huge upgrade. I think I tweeted out earlier today, what I'd love to see Tennessee do is go trade for Julio, try to acquire Ertz, because they've got a tight end hole as well.
That's right.
Anthony Firkser ain't it, but if you get Julio, you probably don't need a tight end. And then Jamison Crowder's getting cut at some point here from the Jets. I think that's a given. And you add those to Tennessee as the weapons to put there with Tannehill and that defense they have. And, they've been having a couple really good years. That could be enough to get them over the top. So I'm all in for Julio in Tennessee.
Nice. We got Miguel over here, the GM, already building a team. He's got Julio going there. He's got Ertz going there.
I want nothing less than that to happen, but you're probably right.
Yeah, Yeah, Ryan, as a Ravens fan, doesn't want any teams in the AFC getting any better. That's for sure.
No, I just hate the Titans.
Just hate the Titans.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And growing up, outside the Niners, I loved the Titans. I just loved Eddie George. For some reason, Eddie George and Steve McNair were just everything. And at the time, I thought Jeff Fisher was a great coach. But in that era, he probably was.
Yeah. So, Ryan, this next question, then, you kind of may have already answered it. But with Julio Jones, between the Patriots and the Tennessee Titans, if you're an owner, which team do you want him to go to?
Fantasy-wise, Titans, because we don't know what the Patriots are going to be running, or what kind of offense is going to look like. We don't know who's going to be quarterback. They're still a run-heavy team because their defense is really good. So the Titans make sense, and A.J. Brown's going to take a lot of pressure off of Julio. So I think that's where he gets the most fantasy production. But again, I just don't like the Titans, so I'd rather burn.
I agree. I don't like if he lands in New England. It's already kind of bad being a dynasty owner. I think that would just be worse.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it kills him.
Yeah, I agree.
think you could trade him within the first week, though, if that happens, for a decent value. you're going to find at least one person in the league get excited.
Yeah, a Patriots fan.
To the Mac Jones owner.
Yeah, or a Patriots fan will probably they'll be all over it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's talk about another guy that also has really no news since the last time we had a show. Aaron Rodgers. The GM came out and said he will not trade Aaron Rodgers. They've been supposedly clearing cap space to try to re-sign Rodgers to this long-term extension. Ryan, you still think that Aaron Rodgers is going to be a Packer, or what do you think now?
I mean, this trade's not looking real promising. I think if it happens, it's going to be a lot later than we expect, the way it's going. There's no news. They're saying that they're a stalemate, and they're both stubborn. And it could be 2 games into the season before, I'm starting to think there's going to be a holdout, and it's going to be a late trade if it happens. I have very little faith in the situation.
Miguel, let me ask you, if you're doing a startup draft right now, or even maybe if you're doing redraft in the late summer and he's still not necessarily locked in to be a Packer, where are you putting some of these pieces? Like, where are you getting Devontae Adams and Aaron Jones and those kind of guys? Are you downgraded them quite a bit?
I mean, by then, I think the ADP will naturally adjust and all these guys will get downgraded due to the uncertainty. No one's going to want to... Right, and with your first-round pick, everyone wants the most certain thing they can get.
Yeah, good point.
And if you don't have Aaron Rodgers there, people are going to feel very uncertain. But I would still be really bullish on grabbing all of them at discounts because I don't think he's going anywhere. I think this is going to get resolved with money and probably with Jordan Love getting traded. I think that's what's going. I think that's the more likely scenario is that Jordan Love gets traded and they appease the Rodgers and the fan base. I mean, let's be honest. If they run Rodgers out of town, all of Wisconsin is going to be up in arms with pitchforks at Lambeau. There's just no way you survive that as a GM. There's none. Rodgers has all the power here just from that standpoint alone. So I think he stays. I think it's all going to be fine in the end. It's just going to see what it's going to take for him to stay there. But I think it's going to be a combination of money and Jordan Love.
Yeah, I agree there. I think they will have to move Jordan Love. That situation just is toxic in a way.
Can we move Jordan Love for Julio Jones?
Hey, there you go.
I mean, yeah.
I mean, you haven't given him a weapon in forever, so how about that weapon?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. That would be the perfect thing. That would be the perfect trade to appease Aaron Rodgers and be like, I'll come back.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, he'll be in the building within 5 minutes.
Yeah. Exactly.
If something happens where Rodgers isn't the starter, you know who it's an upgrade for? It's probably AJ Dillon. Because that team's gonna be running the ball a lot more. So his carries in games where Aaron Jones is healthy will be, instead of maybe 5 to 7, moving up to 9 to 11 carries.
Yeah.
And then if Jones would go down, obviously that's the upgrade there. But he has that value as a backup if something would happen to Rodgers when he's not there.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah,
that'd be worth a cheap trade to stash.
Yeah, definitely a point there because they would go to a run-heavy offense for sure, and they would probably rotate Dillon in quite more often than they would have normally. All right, a couple more small ones that we'll get to just really quick. The Giants came out and said they could limit Barkley early in the season. Any surprises there, Ryan?
No, I'm okay with it.
Yeah,
He doesn't need 30 carries a game to break down again.
Yeah, and if I'm an owner, I'm okay with it as well because I think that's less chance of a re-injury. So yeah, protect him if you can. Keep him on the field. And then, Miguel, this one's for you. The Jets supposedly are rotating between 3 different running backs in OTAs, which, we don't know that means a whole lot right now. But Michael Carter, Tevin Coleman, and Ty Johnson, with LaMichael P. Ryan being sort of the odd man out there. Anything to read here? Anything you're reading in the OTAs on this?
Buy low on Ty Johnson. I mean, he's probably the least known commodity there. He had one pretty big game last year. Otherwise, he's kind of an athletic freak if you kind of go to Player Profiler and look at his stats. Again, ambiguous backfield, take the cheapest guy, and I'm all about Ty Johnson. Michael Carter's going to get a shot, sure. Tevin Coleman is a shell of his former self. So,
which was never that great.
Yeah.
Yeah, which was never that great to begin with. He was just okay. So give me Ty.
Yeah, I like it. Go for the cheap guy. And Ryan's never been a supporter of Tevin Coleman at all. He's hated him on this show quite often.
Yeah, it's been for years. He's just not good. He's not creative.
All right, real quick before we get into the PSI, guys. Right now with the Scott Fish Bowl allowing kickers for the first time in the flex position, we are going to honor that by all proceeds of our No Kickers T-shirt sales are going to go to the Toys for Tot promotion or Toys for Tot charity. Visit goingfor2.com/SFB11 and buy your shirt today. Again, all proceeds are going to Toys for Tots in honor of the Scott Fish Bowl having kickers this year. So we're going to have our No Kickers T-shirts. So if you're team No Kickers, go out and get your shirt. All right, let's kick off this the PSI here. We're going to go through the top 3 tiers that we had on your article just recently that dropped. So we'll start here with the tier 3 guys who have a 10% hit range in this rate. This is a 70% percentile range. And the big one that sort of stood out to me was Devonta Smith. Everybody's kind of really high on him. Heisman winner and everything else that he was. So what's your thoughts on Devonta Smith, Miguel, and why do you think he falls here into tier 3 and not a tier 2 or tier 1 guy?
For him, I still am a big fan of Devonta Smith. This is still a good range to be in. Obviously, it's not where people would like to see him based off of the Heisman and the draft capital and all of that, right? But at the end of the day, you've got a receiver who's 166 pounds. That's not a profile we have seen be successful. That's not to say that it can't be successful. We just haven't seen it. So it's hard to make that projection that, oh, yes, he's going to be great. But on top of that, it's not like he broke out super early. He did it just before his 21st birthday. He did so in spectacular fashion, right? Putting up a 47% dominator rating, winning the Heisman, just doing it absolutely all. So there's definitely some risk there because it all really culminated in his senior year, and we tend to see that senior year trap where the guy blows up and everyone thinks he's great, and then he enters the NFL and he's not. I don't think Devonta Smith is going to fall into that. I still think he's going to be really good. I think this is just going to limit his upside. Is he really an alpha wide receiver in fantasy football, the guy that you would compare to a DeAndre Hopkins, a Julio Jones, that perennial guy that's going to score you 300 plus points a year? I don't think he's that guy, but I still think he's going to be good. So that's kind of where I'm at with Smith. If I can get him, mid in a rookie draft, if I can get him mid first round or later, I think that's a win.
Yeah, I think that's where he's pretty much going. 106, depending on if it's super flex or not. 109, 110, somewhere in that range. Ryan, what's your thoughts on Devonta Smith?
Well, kind of similar to before. Like through the draft process, I like the flashes and I like what he does, but it's very specialized. Like those receivers with his build or just around that range, even a little bigger, like Tyler Lockett. I always use him and Tyreek Hill, for example, because they're outliers, those smaller receivers who are really explosive, but they're in the perfect situations with their quarterbacks. They have guys who can sling it. We don't really know if Jalen Hurts is capable of that yet. So Devonta Smith's career is very much going to be dependent on what Hurts can do in the deep ball category and taking those shots to him. So I'm a little more hesitant. I'm probably drafting him as, if I'm picking where he's the man there, I'm probably going to try to trade back. But I'm somewhere between 3 and 4 with him still. It's hard. It's upside versus the floor scares me.
Yeah.
That's an interesting thing, situation to bring up too is Jalen Hurts, which I wasn't really considering, right? I'm just talking about the prospect himself, but he's guaranteed for the first 2 years of his career to be tied to Jalen Hurts at least. And as much as I'd love to see Jalen Hurts ball out, and hopefully he does, he wasn't all that great last year. He was definitely kind of deer in the headlights and was really not putting up fantastic numbers that made you feel really confident heading into the year. But it was a horrible situation, so who knows? But yeah, if Jalen Hurts is not great and is more like Daniel Jones, right? Then yeah, he's in trouble, right? Those first 2 years are everything for a wide receiver, and if you're not, getting all of that volume or getting good volume, it's hard to reach that that pinnacle for yourself as a player. And so his value in Dynasty could definitely take a hit as a result.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right, so we got two other guys I wanted to talk about that are in this tier, and this is kind of why I like the PSI and why I've used it a couple times in my drafts. Is it kind of identifies some guys that maybe you weren't thinking about, some guys you can get super late that have some really good upside. And the first one is Jalen Darden from the Bucks. He falls here in the tier 3 as well. What's it about Darden that you like, Miguel?
Darden is interesting. I'm actually personally, I'm happy he's here. I'm not a personal fan of Darden. I'm not out there chasing him myself, but I understand why he's here. I mean, he went to North Texas. He put up a 55% dominator rating. He broke out at 20 years old. He was the number 1 wide receiver on his team, which is what you really want to see. But he's undersized. He's 5'7", 174. It's kind of the story of this wide receiver class. It's just if you like small receivers, so I have a class for you.
Yeah.
He's even got small hands. He's got sub 9-inch hands, and I know people like to throw around with BMI and all that. But I actually think hand size does matter, especially for wide receivers, right? If there's one position where that probably matters, it's going to be there. But his athletic measurables were fine. They weren't anything spectacular. He was probably more agile than he was, straight line fast or explosive. To me, I think why I'm really not chasing Jalen Darden as much is where he landed. In Tampa Bay, I mean, he is buried behind. I mean, Tampa Bay is known for drafting a lot of really good wide receivers who profile really well. Am I surprised Jalen Darden is on Tampa Bay? Not one bit. They've drafted Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Justin Watson was a previous PSI favorite. Scotty Miller is pretty good as well. And what did they get last year? Oh, Tyler Johnson. I mean, the list goes on and on. It's every analytical wide receiver's dream ends up in Tampa Bay somehow. So that's just a lot to overcome. I think he's got to see that roster. And then Antonio Brown is still around. So, in the short term in year 1, I don't think he sees the field at all. I think he is the Scotty Miller replacement, though. I think that's why they drafted him. They can't pay all their wide receivers. They've already paid Evans. They've already paid Godwin. Scotty Miller did really well last year, even though he faded towards the end. I think that was kind of coincided with Brown arriving. But anyways, eventually they're going to have to pay him, and I don't think they can. And so they kind of drafted Darden to, I think, replace Miller. And so in a couple of years, he may have some value. I just don't think he's going to have it right now. But he also comes in with a very low injury risk rating, which is good to see as well. So you don't really have to worry about him ending up on the injury list every week. So, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with Darden.
I like it. Yeah, he's someone definitely you can stash in your taxi squad and just hope, it's definitely a dart throw for sure with that offense the way it's built right now. He's a down the road kind of guy. You have any thoughts on Darden, Ryan?
Not really. We're a little deep on this, and I don't love the landing spots.
Yeah,
So,
I agree.
really.
Now
But he's now on the list.
Yeah, this next guy that is here, I think this is a little bit more interesting for me at least because this receiving core is not quite as deep. I do think there's some chance that he could see some playing time this year. I'm going to mess up his first name, so I'm not even going to say it. Smith Marset. I don't even know if either one of y'all know how to say his first name. Amir, that's how I would pronounce it. But I don't know if that's correct or not. Talk about him a little bit and why he's here in the third tier.
Yeah, so he checks in with a 76.1% PSI rank. Amir Smith Marset, I think is how you pronounce his name. Went to the Minnesota Vikings, and I think it's a prime depth chart to land him. I mean, it's Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, who's entering his age 31 year.
He's surprised.
And that's it. I mean, there is nothing else on that roster as far as a wide receiver goes. Not only that, but then there's not much there at a tight end spot. That's like an elite tight end. Sure, they've got Irv Smith, and I know a lot of people are high on Irv Smith, and sure, he could have a good season, but is he George Kittle? Is he Travis Kelce? Is he Darren Waller? No. So if you're not that tight end, I'm not really worried about you. You're not a difference maker enough, right? At least he hasn't shown that yet. So, if Thielen goes down or Justin Jefferson misses any time, I mean, Smith Marset is easily the third best wide receiver on that roster right now. He should overtake BC Johnson here soon. Chad Beebe is nothing. Be surprised if he makes the team. So he should definitely have some appeal early on in his career. I would be surprised if he doesn't. So he's someone that I can easily take and stash. He kind of reminds me of Darnell. Was it Darnell Mooney? Darnell Mooney?
Yeah, Darnell Mooney for the Bears.
Darnell Mooney? The Bears last year. I mean, that was kind of the same reason I liked Mooney. He was in Tier 3 last year, and he was right at the end. He was the last guy. But I didn't love that depth chart beyond A-Rob. Like, that was it. Give me Mooney. And I already thought he was the second best receiver on the team the second they drafted him, and sure enough, he was.
Yep.
So I think Smith-Marset kind of fits that mold where he's not going to have as successful as the first year as Mooney did, but he can be someone whose stock rises and you can maybe flip, from a fourth, fifth round or whatever it takes to invest in Marset and turn it around for a second round pick next year or something.
Yeah, definitely. Now, Ryan, I know last time we did a deep dive on rookies, we actually skipped this one because neither our guests nor you had scouted him or looked at him at all. So I'm not going to put you on the spot too much, but have you looked at him since?
Who, Amir Smith?
Yeah, Smith-Marset.
Not really, but that landing spot really intrigues me. Like, he has to beat out O.C. Johnson as their third receiver. And he's somebody to watch in camp regardless. And he's still somebody a lot of people aren't going to notice because of how late he was drafted. And they don't pay attention to things like that. So it's definitely a nice dart throw. And probably pick him up post-draft.
Yeah, you definitely could probably get him as a free agent after the draft because I don't think anybody really knows this guy that well, and that depth chart is definitely there for the taking for sure. And even with Thielen being a little bit older, who knows? He did have a year, 2 years ago where he was injured. So if that happens again this year, he can definitely step into a role right away.
And Thielen plays the slot, so him being on the outside at 6'1" makes sense.
Yeah, good call. All right, so that's it for the Tier 3 guys I wanted to talk about. Let's move into the Tier 2 guys. And the first name I wanted to talk about on here is the guy that I was really high on pre-draft and then even more so post-draft because of where he landed, Nico Collins. What's your thoughts on Nico Collins here? He's in the Tier 2. This is a 25% hit rate.
Yeah, I mean, I was a big fan of Nico Collins throughout the whole process. I thought he was pretty underrated as an overall player. Where did he go in the draft? What was he? He's a third-round pick. Just solid draft capital. Went to a depth chart or went to a team right now that's just kind of in limbo.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole franchise is. What is going on in Houston from the ownership on down? Like, just such a weird fan base play. Yeah, it is. I like that it's just him and Brandon Cooks, right? Because Fuller's now gone, and then I can't think of anyone else on their team. Kiki Kuti, if he's still there.
Randall Cobb.
Oh, God, yeah, and the ghost of Randall Cobb. Get out of here. So he's making an insane amount of money. What did they pay him, like $30 million over 2 years? Like guaranteed
something ridiculous.
Or something? Yeah. Something ridiculous.
Way too much.
Cobb's living it up in Houston, that's for sure. Yeah, seriously good for him. He's kind of getting that Michael Gallup label for me a few years ago, right? Michael Gallup, when he got drafted to the Cowboys, I was really high on him. One, because I thought he was a good prospect, but two, because that landing spot, I was like, oh, he's going to get all those vacated targets that we love to talk about, but then that doesn't always materialize. So I've kind of learned that that's not always as great as it may sound and as logical as it may seem. On paper, it doesn't always pan out that way because a lot of things happen between now and the start of the season and throughout the season that impact that. So, if he ends up having to catch passes from Tyrod Taylor and Davis Mills, I mean, do I really want those targets? Are they really going to be meaningful to me? I mean, he still has to play opposite Brandon Cooks, and Brandon Cooks is still great. Sure, he's a hit away from, being the Jordan Reed of wide receivers, but he's still there. So, I like Nico Collins. I think he's going, as of my write-up, he was going in the third round. I'm not sure where he's going now. I guess if he's still there, that's fine. If he's any higher than that, if it's a second-round pick I've got to spend on Nico, I'm probably out. I'd rather just wait and see and take my shot on someone else.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think third round pick is where he's going. At least in my latest mocks, is where he's been going. Is a third round pick, and that's a good place to take a receiver like that because, who knows? Maybe Deshaun Watson clears his name and he's a starting quarterback day one, and now you got Nico Collins as a wide receiver 2, and who knows? I think it's definitely worth a dart throw for sure.
If Watson plays, then all bets are off, and let's go.
Yep. Ryan, what are your thoughts on Nico Collins?
So, I was lukewarm on him as a prospect. Just, I like big receivers, but I think they're kind of fool's gold in fantasy from time to time when they're not super explosive. That said, man, his role in that offense makes sense. Even the receivers we mentioned, like Hugh, Randall Cobb, Brandon Cooks, none of them are big-bodied receivers. They don't have a real tight end. Him at 6'4" is their red zone threat if they can move the ball down there. Like you said, Davis Mills and Tyrod Taylor. I mean, Tyrod will be good enough, but if Watson does come back, that's his red zone guy.
Yeah.
I don't see, even if he's knocking 100 targets, 80 targets, he might get 30 in the red zone just because there's no one else down there and can get you flex appeal.
Yeah. I mean, he's got jump ball receiver written all over him, and if Watson is there, I mean, he may not get you a ton of yards, but he might get you a ton of touchdowns with. Yeah. And that might be what you live and die by, but I mean, no one's going to put him as their starter. It's already a flex option, right?
Yeah. He could be Mike Williams.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Mike Williams.
He had a 37.5-inch vert and 125-inch broad jump. I mean, that's explosive for a guy that big. So, I could tell you.
He can give you production fantasy-wise like someone like Mike Williams does.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
All right, we're running a little bit long, so let me just hit one more guy that I definitely wanted to talk about because I want to get your thoughts on him. I've been poo-pooing him for quite a while. Mr. Rondale Moore for the Cardinals. What are your personal thoughts on Rondale Moore, and then what is your stats say about him?
I mean, he checks in with an 89.2% PSI rank, so the model likes him. I mean, he was almost in tier 1. And for good reason. I mean, he broke out as a true freshman at age 18. He put up almost 1,300 yards, 12 touchdowns. Everything you wanted as a Devy prospect happened in his true freshman year, and it screamed future stud wide receiver. And then it all kind of fell apart after that. He is next year. I think he only played 4 games because he hyperextended his left knee, and then he missed. Only played 4 games that year. Then he hyperextended his knee. I forget what the order of his injuries were, but then he missed another 8 games the year after that. He's an undersized wide receiver again. Not to beat a dead horse, but that's where we're at with this class. He stands 5'7", 180 pounds. He goes to an interesting offense that might be able to use him in unique ways, which is great. He's going to a creative mind. But you've got DeAndre Hopkins there as the alpha. They've even added in the ghost or whatever is left of AJ Green. You've got Christian Kirk, who's been fine. He's not horrible. But he's obviously not a great wide receiver, but he's been fine. He's definitely serviceable, better NFL receiver than fantasy receiver. And then who else do they have out there? I feel like they've got one more.
And the Isabella.
Oh yeah, and the Isabella, who's never seen the field. Poor guy. He had 2 big plays, and then they never play him.
Yep.
I don't know what he did. He peed in someone's Cheerios. So it's hard to envision Rondale Moore giving you a lot of fantasy production, given where he's at and given his stature and how they're going to use him. I just don't see it. They still have Chase Edmonds that they can throw out passes to. They don't have a tight end and is it still Max Williams?
Yeah.
Oh God, I'm surprised they didn't add a body there. Wow. There are some underneath receptions to be had, but I just don't think it's going to be very many. I think Kirk and Hopkins and even Green are going to be more than enough. That's going to leave very little for Rondale Moore to do. They might get him on some jet sweeps or, some crazy little plays here and there. He's an interesting prospect for sure. My player comp for him was a unicorn because we've never seen anyone like him before. Never seen anyone of that size with that production in college do what he did. But Yeah, I don't love it for a first round pick or even really a second round pick in dynasty rookie drafts.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think he's going in the first round or at least high second, and that's just too rich for my blood because I'm not going to be using a pick on a unicorn. Something that's never happened before in the NFL. I'm not risking my first round pick on it. So
I think a lot of people are still holding on to their Devy, their Devy status that they had for him way back when.
Yeah, yep. Ryan, I've already kind of got your thoughts on Rondo more, but just real quick, have you changed anything, or you still think the same?
I still think the same. I don't know how he fits in that offense. He is a 2022 best ball pick for me. Like, I'll draft him next year when his value's deflated for best ball leagues only, because I'm sure he's going to have one game with 2 for 86, another game with 4 for 150, and not do shit the rest of the year. Like, that's where I see his career going, fantasy-wise. Great weapon for a football team, not great for us.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I think he'll be a great chess piece for the Cardinals to use, but not nobody I want on my fantasy team. He's just going to be too boomer bust to have those big plays that they'll find in that offense, but nothing that you can count on. There won't be enough volume for him, I don't think. All right, let's touch on just these last two guys I had on here. We'll kind of group them together just really quick. Dyami Brown and Jaylen Waddle from the Ravens. What are your thoughts real quick on these guys, Miguel?
I love Brown. I think he's great, and I think he's going to complement Terry McLaurin very well in Washington. Now, is he going to blow up in year one with Ryan Fitzpatrick? Probably not. Ryan Fitzpatrick tends to hone in on one guy and one guy only everywhere he's ever been. But I love what Washington has been building as a wide receiver core there the last few years. They added McLaurin, then Antonio Gandy-Golden, who got hurt and didn't play very much last year, but I still think is a very good prospect. And now they've added Dyami Brown. So I think they've got a really diverse group of various skill sets. And Washington's building something really great over there. And Dyami Brown as a deep threat, probably better for best ball, as Ryan was just mentioning, because I could see him going, the Will Fuller route and just blow up one game and then do nothing the rest of the year. But I love him long term. Once Washington gets a quarterback of the future, Sam Howell maybe, who knows, then I'll be buying up all the Brown that I can in dynasty leagues. Until then, I'll probably back off a little bit and kind of wait for it to play out. And then Jaylen Waddle, he was someone as a Devy prospect I loved. He broke out all over the place. He had a huge dominator rating. He was in the 40s. Everything about him screamed future star. Then he tore his ACL and just kind of kept getting dinged up here and there. And his injury rating is pretty high. I think it's one of the highest of the class, if not the highest. Let me pull it up. 6.5%, or 6.5%, 6.5 is the rating. So that I think that was one of the highest, if not the highest, for the class. I think I ended up kind of comparing him to Mario Manningham in my write-up, which if anyone remembers him, he was pretty good for a little bit. Then the knee injuries caught up, and then he was out of the league. Yeah. And I can totally see Jaylen Waddle having that type of career where he's really good for a couple of years, kind of breaks out a little bit and is productive, and then fizzles out real quick. Gotcha. So that's kind of where I'm at with him.
All right, good stuff. Take a quick commercial break here. We'll come back and we'll do tier 1, and then we're also going to do a first round mock draft. So hold tight.
Experience a new way to play daily fantasy sports and esports on Thrive Fantasy. Thrive's game concept revolves around player props, which are simple over-unders on player stats. There are contests for traditional sports including the NFL, NBA, MLB, PGA, and cricket, as well as esports titles including CSGO, Dota 2, League of Legends, and more coming soon. Here's how to play. Choose your lineup of over-unders for top-tier athletes that have the biggest impact on the game. Each prop has a fantasy point total based on how likely it is to hit. The more points the selection is worth, the riskier it is. Rack up the most points and win a share of the prize pool. Thrive is awarded over $2 million in cash, so come and prop up today.
All right, and welcome back. I'm here with Miguel and Ryan, and we have moved up into Tier 1 of the PSI rankings, and we got a couple good ones here. The first one I know Ryan was a big fan of. He hoped that he would land with his team, but he did not. He went to Carolina. Mr. Terrace Marshall. What are your thoughts on Terrace Marshall, and what does the model say about him, Miguel?
So he comes in at 98.4% of the PSI rank. Let's kind of just level set with Terrace Marshall, right? He's coming out of LSU, who just produced two of the best, it's kind of spoiler alert, wide receiver prospects we've seen in a long time, in Justin Jefferson, who smashed records as a rookie, and now Jamar Chase, who is equal to, if not better than, Justin Jefferson. So, and it wasn't too long ago when LSU produced the tandem of Odell Beckham and Jarvis Landry to the NFL. So if there's a school that can, claim the wide receiver it might be LSU. It's hard pressed to find a better one. So that alone kind of gets you a little bit interested, right? You don't like to scout the helmet, but it's sometimes a little hard to not do that a little bit. But Marshall broke out as a 20-year-old. He compiled a 33% dominator rating. He's entering the NFL at age 21. All things we'd like to see. In addition, he's 6'2", he's 205, and he's got 9.5-inch hands. Plus, he ran a 4.40. So all things that make him a really good prospect, and I'm really excited for Terrace Marshall. The one thing that is the red flag for me that I can't get over is his injury risk. He fractured both his tibia and fibula in separate injuries in high school. Then in college, he went and he got a stress fracture in his foot that caused him to miss the final few games of his season, when I think he was playing with Chase and Jefferson, when he was doing really well alongside both of them. So that was also a really good sign. But that's a lot of lower leg body injuries to take on at such a young age. That makes me a little nervous for him. But, maybe he doesn't end up having the longest career of anyone, right? Most of these guys don't. So that's not a horrible thing, but I think that might cap his upside a little bit. But I still am a big Terrace Marshall fan. I think he's great, and I'm excited to see what he can do in Carolina. I wish they would have gotten a better quarterback than Sam Darnold. But, what are you going to do?
Yep, definitely. Ryan, I know you love Marshall, but I'll give you one more chance to talk him up here.
First of all, I want to say I was excited about Bateman over Marshall. Bateman was my dude. But I love Terrace Marshall. He was definitely in the conversation. He's my either wide receiver 3 or 4, depending on the day of the week. I like him there, man. Like, similar to what I said with Nico Collins, he does something the other receivers in the depth chart doesn't do. He's a big red zone threat, and they don't really have that. They don't have a great tight end, so that makes sense. He won jump ball situations. He's electric. He makes big plays. He's the perfect receiver to go across from DJ Moore for both of them to produce. And I know we have some hesitation about Sam Darnold, but this is by far the best offense he's ever worked with. And if it gets moving, he can be an effective part of it, especially when it comes to scoring touchdowns.
Yeah, I think Sam Darnold's going to obviously improve his volume stats. Like, without question, he's going to throw for the most yards, touchdowns that he's ever thrown. But is it going to be pretty? Probably not. If he ends up being, Ryan Fitzpatrick-y, Jameis Winston-y, where he's throwing a lot of picks, but he's also helping your guys be incredibly fantasy relevant, I'm not going to care.
Yeah, exactly. 100% agree.
With them not having a tight end, the running the trio of Moore, Marshall, and Robbie Anderson. I mean, if they just go 3 wide that whole time and just keep airing it out, that could be a really big thing for fantasy football.
Yeah, agreed. We did have a question from Facebook here, but I'm going to get to this next guy first because this next guy is actually part of the question. Mr. Rashad Bateman, who did go to the Ravens. What are your thoughts on Bateman? Did you downgrade him at all? I know the model wouldn't have downgraded him because it's based on prospect, but did you downgrade him personally when he went to the Ravens? Miguel.
Sorry, I missed the last part of that. You broke up. What was the last part of that question?
I
downgraded him when?
Did you downgrade him going to the Ravens? I know the model wouldn't have downgraded him, but did you downgrade him?
No. I think I've seen it too many times where we try to, again, it's hard not to project out based off landing spots because, we can be pretty good at it, but we're not perfect at it. A lot of things can change in a very short period of time. So, what does Bateman need to be afraid of? Sammy Watkins? I'm not afraid of Sammy Watkins at this point. Marquise Brown hasn't been able to stake a claim. Miles Boykin didn't do anything. Who else they got? Devin Duvernay. Okay. It's all about if you think Lamar Jackson is going to throw more. And if you think he is, then Bateman's in a really good spot to smash early on. And for that reason, I'm not going to try to project that he's not going to throw for more. I don't know. It sounds like Baltimore wants to do that. Why else draft a wide receiver? Maybe they weren't throwing because they didn't have good receivers to throw to.
Yeah, that's a good call.
Yeah.
Right? You don't know why they weren't throwing.
I can tell you Willie Snead's not good. I'm watching him. He's so bad.
Yeah. Willie Snead was fine once upon a time, but he's not great now. Good luck in Las Vegas. And Mark Andrews was great the year before, but then I think he was a little dinged up and he was kind of in and out of the lineup. So there's a lot of things that went wrong for the Ravens. So I'm not downgrading him based on landing spot at all. In fact, I'll need it up. For me, he was, Marshall has been my wide receiver 4. It's not often that I go right by my rankings, the way the model spits it out. I like to do my own rankings based off of it, but for the top 4, it basically went this way. I go back and forth between Bateman and the next guy more as 2 or 3. I love them both, but I love Bateman in Baltimore, and I can't wait for him to tear it up and Lamar maybe have an MVP season and Ryan to go absolutely bananas.
I get a little excited during the season.
And Ryan, so I'm going to ask you the question here. This is for fantasy purposes. The question on Facebook was Terrace Marshall or Rashad Bateman for fantasy purposes?
I mean, probably Terrace Marshall due to volume. But I think that could be an early on towards late on thing. Because I think this year, take Marshall, if we're talking dynasty, it could go either way because basically Baltimore, they brought in a new passing coordinator, brought in T. Marshall as a receiving coach to kind of change things up. They're not Harbaugh guys, which is a good thing. And if Baltimore doesn't improve their passing this year and they have an early exit from the playoffs again, we know who the scapegoat's going to be, and that's Greg Roman. And if you get rid of somebody like that, the team's going to go the entire opposite way because you can't draft a similar or bring in a similar coach, which means they're going to bring in a pass-heavy guy, and that could just light the world on fire. Kind of how Miguel said, we don't know what the future is. And, I mean, most cases, you're not rookie wide receivers year one. You're not really counting on them to be an impact until they are.
Yeah, that's a good call. I'm torn. I actually had this actually happen to me in one of my recent rookie drafts, and I took Bateman in a 16-team league, and I think I took him at 108, I believe. And I had the chance to draft Marshall as well, and I went Bateman. I like the fact that he is basically walking in a situation where he's the number 1 receiver. I mean, for all intents and purposes, he's the number 1 there, I think. And I think he gets the volume that he's going to need to be good. I think he'll be efficient enough to put up fancy points. So I think I'm going Bateman. It's close. He
should be the one.
Yeah.
I mean, the skill sets and volume. Like Hollywood Brown's a deep threat. You want him to be Deshaun Jackson.
Watkins hasn't been the number 1 guy on his team since he was in Buffalo.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. That's not going to change now when he's older and not as efficient as he used to be.
Agreed.
Watkins might end up being the number 4 receiver on the team by the end of camp.
Yeah.
Or early on. They love Duvernay. He's doing well, and he fits that slot role. Hollywood's not going anywhere. Bateman could overtake him very quickly.
Yeah, it's a good call. Yeah. All right, so we got 2 more guys to get to here. You kind of alluded to one of them already, Miguel. Elijah Moore, who from the pre-draft to post-draft, at least in a lot of my rankings, probably made some of the biggest leaps. I think I had him as a late second rounder, early in the process, and he just kept climbing up, and now you've got him, pretty high in your model as well. What are your thoughts on Elijah Moore?
I love Elijah Moore. I'm all in on the Jets as far as mining value in drafts because everyone's low on the Jets. Everyone still has this Adam Gase PTSD. They don't want to take anyone. Obviously, they think things are going to get a little better, but so the Jets. They're only going to win a couple games, blah, blah, blah. No one's really talking about but I think he's in a great spot. I think that entire franchise is in for a rejuvenation here in the next couple of years, and it's going to start week 1. And I think it's going to start with Zach Wilson and end with Elijah Moore. That tandem is, I'm a big Zach Wilson fan, so I think this tandem is going to take the league by storm here at some point or another. For me, Elijah Moore, is, again, he's coming from maybe the only arguable school that can claim wide receiver U, which is Ole Miss, right? Recently with A.J. Brown and DK Metcalf.
Right.
Hard to argue with those guys as well. And those guys thought that he was better than them at the time, right? They looked to Elijah Moore for leadership on that team, not the other way around. So Elijah Moore broke out at 19, caught 850 yards, 6 touchdowns. He posted a career dominator rating of almost 42%, and then ran a 4.35 40 at his pro day, as well as a 10.6 agility score. So the dude's just off the charts. I think he could be, I don't want to put a lot of pressure on it, but like Antonio Brown. Antonio Brown's 5'10", 180 something.
Yeah.
Elijah Moore's 5'9", 178. It's not too far off, but in terms of their route running, their ability to just catch anything that comes their way, I think that's a really great comp. And if I'm getting young Antonio Brown, I think I'd be thrilled.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that one. Yeah, you got me all excited now. I want to go draft him now. I don't have any shares of him so far, so I like I said, I kept raising him up. He's now in the first round for me.
I just drafted both him and Zach Wilson together.
Oh, nice. That's a great combo to have. Ryan, what are your thoughts on Elijah Moore?
I like Elijah Moore a lot. Not as much as you just sold him to, man. And I'm upset that I didn't realize you were this high on him. But, he fits their offense and their needs. You mentioned earlier about Jameson Crowder being cut. There's your reason why. He does everything that Crowder does except for at lightning speeds. He's a very good football player. I'm not quite there with AB, but I could see him being a 115 to 120 target guy and breaking off big plays with it, which I'm really cool with. And I could start him as a low-end wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 down the line. I'm cool with that. And I could see him easily in that range with upside. But I'm more confident in the floor with him than I am with a lot of guys. So I'm in on him.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, that's where I'm at with him too. He just kept rising and rising for me. He was always in the top 5 for me, but as the days went on, the weeks went on, post draft, I just was like, dang, this Elijah Moore guy. He's just there.
Just keeps popping up.
He was my 7, 8, somewhere right around there. Kind of stayed consistent, but
yeah, he was, like I said, he was way down low for me, and I just kept raising him up. I kept listening to guys that were smarter than me, and I go, okay, I could see that. Let me move up a little bit more, and I kept just jumping him over some of those guys, and now I think he's in my first round, if not, sort of the late first round, but he's definitely in the first round now. All right, the last guy that I want to talk about in the tier 1 basically is the tier himself, Mr. Jamar Chase, who you alluded to earlier, talking about how good he was compared to that LSU team. I'm gonna give you a chance to kind of pump him up a little bit here. Give us some of your Jamar Chase love, Miguel.
Right. So, like you said, at the start of the show, I've been coming on here for 4 years. This model itself has data that goes all the way back to the 2010 class. So we're over 500. I think we're maybe close to 600 receivers in the model at this point. And of all of those receivers, we've never had a wide receiver score 100%. And, you have to think about that because there's a Julio Jones is in there, and AJ Green is in there, DeAndre Hopkins, Devontae Adams. Odell Beckham Jr., right? Every receiver that is on your team right now or on someone's team, your friend's team, has gone through this model, and none of them have registered that yet. Here we are in 2021, and we finally got our first perfect score, and it is Ja'Marr Chase, which, ironically enough, we may have had it last year had Justin Jefferson done the 3-cone drill, but last year no wide receiver wanted to do a 3-cone drill at the combine or their pro day. It was the strangest thing ever.
Because the DK Metcalf thing, that's what it was. They didn't want to go through the DK Metcalf's gauntlet that they did the year before.
So Justin Jefferson was unable to score 100%, but in his what-if score, which I do as well, had he done that and had he succeeded in the 3-cone drill, which I think we can all safely assume he probably would have, he would have scored. He would have been the first 100. So it's possible that LSU is pumping out the first 2 perfect prospects we've ever seen in the model. He's just beating out. So if you pull up Ja'Marr Chase and then you bring up the next few prospects that are close to him, it's Julio Jones, Odell Beckham, and DJ Moore. I think if you're drafting a wide receiver and you want a sure thing, Ja'Marr Chase is it. That's as close as you're going to get, right? Obviously, guys can always bust, but that's as confident as you're ever going to be in drafting a player, is drafting Ja'Marr Chase. I love him. I just got my first share of him at 103, and absolutely thrilled. Here for the ride.
Nice. I do have my big draft coming up. I think I told you pre-show, and I have the 101. And I've been going back and forth between Najee Harris and Ja'Marr Chase, but I think listening to you, I think it's definitely going to be Ja'Marr Chase at this point, because can't miss. You got to go with your can't miss guys there at the 101.
Yeah, you got to. I think that there's always been the logic of take the bell cow running back, and I'm not going to say there's anything wrong with that, but I think I've just changed my logic to take the elite player at every position first.
Yep.
And then go to default to that. So if it's for me, if I'm drafting, it is Ja'Marr Chase, it is Kyle Pitts, and then I'm going to go down into the running backs, which, if it's Najee or ETN, whichever one you want, I really don't care there. But I'm taking Chase and Pitts 1-2 in any rookie draft.
Nice.
Outside of Superflex.
Ryan, what are your thoughts on Ja'Marr Chase?
I mean, I got really mad the way you had on our show sheet, where you had the players' number, the order you were going over them. And I thought he had Ja'Marr Chase as wide receiver 4. And, all credibility was about to go off. He's so good. As long as I've watched film, I don't know if I've watched a wide receiver who just destroyed people the way he did in every way. He roasted people deep. He won off the line of scrimmage. He took slant routes to the house. He literally did everything. He went against top-tier Alabama corners who were first-round picks and took him to the woodshed in that national championship. He's the real deal. He dominated the SEC in a big way. He had 20 touchdowns was it fresh or sophomore? Sophomore. And that's unbelievable. He's a dominant player he's what you want your wide receiver 1 to be.
Yeah, I like it.
I mean, I agree with everything. I didn't know the numbers were that high on that end, but that's when film and analytics combine like that, it's beautiful.
It's beautiful.
And he's that guy. There's no argument for anybody.
Yep, definitely. Yeah, it's crazy because, listening to some of the scouts and all this stuff, and they're sort of downgrading guys that opted out, their final year. And Ja'Marr Chase opted out, and no one's downgrading Ja'Marr Chase. No one's even mentioned, that they thought maybe he couldn't be as good in his last year. So, yeah, I think Ja'Marr Chase is the 101 for sure.
The other thing is, Cincinnati's not, the more you look at it, Cincinnati's not a bad landing spot.
Mm-mm.
That team's going to throw 600-plus times.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's fantastic for him. He's going to be their number 1 receiver. I love T. Higgins. I had him rated high and had to dip him a little bit, but he's not Ja'Marr Chase.
There's no tight end of consequence whatsoever on that team, so it's just the 3 receivers of Boyd, Higgins, and Chase, which you can now argue is one of the top maybe 5 trios of wide receivers. I'd be hard pressed to find. I think it'd be a good argument. I don't have them all off the top of my head, but that could probably easily be top 5. Yeah. And then Mixon's great, but he's not Christian McCaffrey. He's not going to get 100+ targets. That's just not who he is. He's going to catch some balls, but he's So it's total wheels up for all three of those guys.
Yeah, it's nice. And like I said, it's going to be like Dallas, but they have to throw the ball. I mean, Dallas would have had 3 receivers do that last year. Dak didn't go down. So
it's Dallas and Ohio.
And it was college. It was college, but Joe Burrow showed he could have 3 wide receivers with nasty numbers.
Yeah. And even if you look at last year, I mean, A.J. Green, for the shell that he was, he still had 105 targets. I think all 3 receivers had over 100 targets last year. I know we talked about vacated targets and how you can't really count on that, but if Jamar Chase is getting over 100 targets in this rookie season, I'm ecstatic with that, and he probably end up with more than that. I think he does take some from Higgins and from Boyd as well. All right, so there was a few guys that were sort of missing from your rankings. A couple of guys that we hadn't talked about that people are high on. You kind of put them at the bottom of your article there just as a bullet point, but I want to get your thoughts on these 2 guys. One of them is Jaylen Waddle, which you had all the way down at tier number 8. What are your personal thoughts about Jaylen Waddle, and what does the model say about him?
Yeah, so Jaylen Waddle checks in with a 25.5% PSI rank, which puts him in at tier 8, and that is largely based on his draft capital. Pre-draft, he was at tier 10. That is as low as you can get. And the reason for that was I get what gets people excited. He's definitely the film scout's wide receiver, right? Because you watch him on film, I'm like, if I see him do anything, I'm like, yeah, that's freaking amazing. He's super fast, and he can, burn you really quickly for a huge play. And I get why people get excited about that. But again, past success dictates future success. And in order, to not necessarily to be successful, but largely to be successful in the NFL, you have to have proven that at the college level. You can't just show up to go up against the top 1% of the 1% in the NFL and expect that now you're going to be the star. And Jaylen Waddle was never the star at Alabama, right? He came in his freshman year, and he made a big splash for himself, and people got to know who he was really quickly, but he wasn't the number 1 receiver on his team. And then his sophomore year, curiously, I don't believe he was injured. He just got overtaken by Smith, Judy, and Ruggs. I mean, he was just riding pine for no reason.
Yeah.
Even though he did amazing things as a freshman, which I should also mention, he was just about 20 years old when he came in as a freshman too. So that kind of can explain why he did so well early on, because he was older than probably most of the guys he was going against. So then he gets knocked down. How does that work? Normally, like the Calvin Ridley approach is you keep getting better. And he didn't. At the end of the day, he walked out of Alabama with only a 14% dominator rating. Sure, that could have been higher had he not gotten hurt, but you're playing the what-if game there. We just don't know. And he never broke out. And guys who never broke out had such a low dominator rating and were never the number 1 receiver on their team when it comes to receiving yards. It is a very, very, very small chance of success in the NFL, right? You've got to be the star player in high school to be the star guy in college to be the star guy in the NFL. Like, that's the usual path it takes. And if you're not hitting at all those levels, it typically doesn't materialize at the next one because it only gets harder. So while he does present with a lot of fascinating tools on the field and traits, from an analytical standpoint, it just doesn't amount to a whole lot of anything.
All right, so that was definitely the worst outlook I've heard of Jaylen Waddle, I think, that we've had on since this whole process started. So, Ryan, what are your thoughts on that? And what do you think of Waddle?
It's super messed up. He's my wide receiver 2 coming in, and still follow this.
I feel like I just kicked your dog.
It's not going to change me, like everything he said to accept, but it's something I put in, it's in the back. It was in the back of my mind the whole time.
Yeah.
You didn't mention the injuries, which was an issue. What his rating for that was. I'm sure that brought him down a nice bit too. But there's a lot of questions there. when you say Jamar Chase was a foolproof prospect, he was, and the rest of this draft, there's questions everywhere at wide receiver. And he's undersized, which also hurts. I love when he has the ball in his hands. He's electric. He's going to return punts. Miami's offense could be good, but the way they spread the ball around, him finding the right kind of volume could be an issue too. Will Fuller's there, who does a lot of the same things, maybe not as electric in like short-term space, in like close areas, but it's still a lot of the same. You have Parker. There's a lot of balls there to compete with. I have doubts. Like I said, I haven't had first-round picks this year, and I'm really okay with it looking at the first round past the first.
Yeah.
Top QBs, if it's super flex, and the top three guys of Pitch, Chase, and Harris, because there's just question marks.
Yeah.
I love the idea of Jaylen Waddle, and if he's healthy and it all clicks, but there's a huge gap between the ceiling and the floor for me. Like, it shouldn't be that big.
Yeah. Agreed. I think that's kind of the sentiment going around, is that this draft is very top heavy as far as rookie drafts go, and once you get past those first top guys, it's like, they all have question marks. They all could be good, and they all could, totally miss as well. One more guy that wasn't on your list here, Miguel, is Kadarius Toney, who fell into tier number 6. What hurt Toney? Because he kind of got like a little bit of hype there right before the draft, and has some pretty good draft capital as well. What's your thoughts on Toney?
It's a lot of the same reasons again. You got a guy who for 4 years did nothing in college. The guys he was behind weren't anyone that was noteworthy. The most noteworthy guy that he was behind in a wide receiver room was Van Jefferson, who entered the NFL. Sure, he got some draft capital. What was he, second round pick? Which I thought was overdrafted by the Los Angeles Rams, and then he probably did nothing his rookie year, and we'll see what he does this year. But that was it. He was being outplayed by, I want to say, like 4 other receivers.
Wow. Throughout
his time, 5 other receivers. So it took him until his senior year, once all of those guys had left, and then it was just him and Pitts competing. But I don't really like to look at it because they're different position groups. And even then, he didn't get his first 100-yard game of his college career until the last 3 weeks of his entire collegiate career. He peaked as late as you can possibly peak, and he milked it into a first-round pick. Kudos to him and his agent and his marketing guy, whoever that is. Great job on getting Kadarius Toney in the first round. But again, he exited with a 22% dominator rating. He broke out late at 21.7. Yes, he provides elite straight line speed at 4.4, and he's pretty explosive with a 39.5-inch vert and 136 broad jump. But elite athletic traits only really take you so far. He just didn't do enough in college to really get me excited. He's right there borderline. He just barely missed tier 5, which would have put him in the average wide receiver territory, which we still like to see. So he just barely missed, right? But yeah, I don't know. I'm just not excited about it. Really don't like his landing spot either.
Yeah.
He's going to the New York Giants, who are entering their own Mitch Trubisky year with Daniel Jones. So things will likely not be great this year, but they're probably going to clean house, and they're going to bring in a whole new regime, which means a new quarterback, which things could get better. But again, with that new regime, he's no longer their guy. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, again, just not a big fan. And one thing I wanted to quickly touch on and reiterate was on the being the college wide receiver 1 and why that matters. Prospects who are the college wide receiver 1 who've gone on to succeed make up 92% of all wide receiver successes that we've seen since 2010. And they make up 97% of all the top 24 seasons in total. So if you're not the dude in college, you're likely not going to be the guy in the NFL. And even if you are, it's going to be very short-lived.
Yeah. Wow, that's some pretty powerful stats right there. I mean, that's 97% is a lot. Ryan, I don't know if I ever got your thoughts on Kadarius Toney. I don't know if we ever talked about him on the show. What are your thoughts on Toney?
So when I initially went through like my grading of him, I put he was volume slot receiver. His ceiling was wide receiver too. I thought he was safe to get volume and what he can do with the ball in his hands because he's really good at making guys miss. He's good at making plays on his own. But I had a lot of questions. I had to go back multiple times because I kept seeing like Daniel Jeremiah, people who are higher up in the NFL, really respectable, had him as a first-round pick the entire time. And I kind of questioned, didn't he get it? But he's one of those things where, like, am I smarter than these people? And should I do that, or I just make it the difference? So, I mean, I see the traits that they like, but like Miguel said, there's a lot of question marks. He was a wide receiver on his to his team to a tight end. While he's a generational tight end, he's still a tight end. Yeah. Behind that, I'd never heard his name until his last year in college. Like, he was not even considered a prospect then. Like, he was going to be UDFA before that year. So, it's a lot of question marks. That first-round pick makes you intrigued. I've grabbed in the second round of rookie drafts a couple times now, so I'm there, but huge question marks for me.
Yes.
I pulled up the list of the guys he couldn't beat out for 3 years. Freddie Swain, Van Jefferson, Tyree Cleveland, Trayvon Grimes, Josh Hammond, Brandon Powell. Those are the guys he was literally behind before his senior year.
That's not good. Not good.
Is he really that different?
But he happened to have his two best games against Alabama and LSU, and he rode that to a first-round pick.
Yeah.
And amazing job.
Yeah, that is
get paid, young man.
Yeah, exactly. Get paid.
Save that money.
All right, let's get to the final segment of the night.
Get ready for GoingFor2.com's Forgotten Fantasy Player of the Week.
All right, Miguel, you know how this goes. Give us your forgotten fantasy player.
I think he's still in the league. Did he just get signed by Green Bay? It's Blake Bortles. And the reason I bring up Blake Bortles as a forgotten player is because in the very first year when I started to take fantasy football seriously, and I think it was the first year I subscribed to like a 4for4 subscription and wanted to get better. It was based off of their advice that was like, I had a playoff-ready team. And they were like, go trade for Blake Bortles because he can help you win a championship. And so I went and traded for Blake Bortles, and it rode me all the way to the championship. I didn't win, but he blew up at that point. It was him and A-Rob in garbage time, and I had A-Rob, and it was just bananas. He never panned out for a long career, but for that brief period of time, for those few short weeks when it really mattered, Blake Bortles came through. And so I'll always remember Blake Bortles for that.
Yeah, I got a different memory of Blake Bortles. My first year that we took I have a league that's been going on for like 20 plus years, and we took it to Dynasty. And the year that we first started, it was the year after he blew up. And who did I draft in that draft? A-Rob and Blake Bortles. I teamed them up. A-Rob got hurt that year. Blake Bortles was terrible that year. My Dynasty team was not good that year, so I had to recover from that.
I remember Blake Bortles went really early because this was like redraft days, and in my home league, Blake Bortles went super early the following year, and I was just like, nope, I'm not drafting him. Yeah. Like, that's going to be bad, and it was just about as horrible as it can get.
Definitely.
It's fun. I haven't talked about Blake Bortles in years until the draft this year when Chicago took Fields. I'm like, he's now past Blake Bortles is the best quarterback that Allen Robinson's ever had.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the only reason he's been brought up, which is very, very sad.
Yeah, that is sad.
Yeah, how A-Rob has produced that's Hall of Fame worthy on its own.
Yep, agreed. Agreed. That has to go in the contention when he finally retires. He had these quarterbacks, throwing him the ball. He still put these numbers up. So, I think that should go into his.
He's willed himself to a great career.
Exactly. All right, that wraps the podcast up. Let's go around the room really quick. Give us your Twitter handle one more time, and if you want to plug anything, go ahead and do that. Miguel, we'll start with you.
You can follow me on Twitter at ProFootballPSI. You can go read my work that we've got up at Going for Two. Other than that, that's it.
Good stuff. Ryan?
Check me out here every Wednesdays. Find me on Twitter at Boss534, and find me at the Sports Illustrated Draft Bible podcast on Tuesday nights.
All right, good stuff. As always, guys, you can follow me on Twitter at JeffLambert77. Go check out our Eliminator polls right now. We've got the Eliminator polls for the under 1,000 followers for analysts. We're at the Sweet 16. So if you haven't voted yet, go vote. It'll be pinned on my profile. With that said, for Miguel, for Ryan, I'm Jeff. We'll see y'all next week.
Yeah.